Hello there, peeps. This video is very impromptu. I just saw this interview on TYT, and I thought I'm going to do a reaction to it, because some things I agree with. Apparently, this MRA member was getting interviewed by Jank, and her name is Karen... Oh, damn it. Hold on. Her name is Karen Strawhan, I think that's what her name is. She's like a famous anti-feminist, and she's a female. And I think she has a YouTube channel on YouTube. I think I've watched some of her videos, and she makes a lot of good points. I think she makes a lot of the points I've said in my feminist rants. But let's watch Jank make an ass of himself. I'm gonna pretty much... let's just let the video explain itself. Okay, let's start this.
So we have a very interesting interview for you guys today. It's with Karen Strawn. She is
What's up,
the
Jank?
chief spokesperson for men's and rights Edmonton specifically, but she's actually fairly well known.
For some reason, it just sounds so condescending the way he's saying it. Like, men's rights. Like, you don't have to sound so fucking condescending.
She has a blog called Owning Your Shit, which is a title I enjoy. She has a YouTube channel called Girl Writes What, and she co-hosts a weekly show called Honey Badger Radio. Now, a lot of the people in the audience have asked us to talk to men's rights advocates. That is exactly what we're doing here. Now, sometimes on the show we have disagreed with such advocates on a case-by-case basis. That doesn't mean this is going to be a debate. This is going to be an
Okay, guys, can I say this? I've watched this video earlier. This was a fucking debate. I mean, it probably wasn't planned, but I mean, I guess I don't have to spoil it for you. I'll just wait till we get there. But about close to the end, that last like 10 minutes, this literally turned into a debate. So, just want to say that.
Expedition. Okay, Karen, thanks for joining us on the Young Turks. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me.
What exactly is men's rights? What does that mean?
Oh my god.
There are certain issues where men's rights are sort of routinely violated, at least on as far as an equality basis. There are certain
I bet you in
situations,
Jank's like
men
back
can
of his
find
mind, he's
themselves in
like,
where they
he's probably
have
laughing in
essentially
the back of his mind.
no due process, particularly domestic violence and cases where you can be put in jail without any kind of due process at all, or you can be kept from your home.
You see how rational she sounds? I've said this
those types
before.
of things, well, the laws tend to be gender neutral. They do disproportionately affect men. There's also there's some legal rights that men lack. The right to genital integrity is one of the big ones, and it's sort of it's a bone of contention among some in this movement, because there are some people who believe that circumcision should be banned, and then there are others who don't feel that way. But it is a very common complaint.
My thoughts on circumcision, I personally do agree it should be banned. I'm sorry. It's just, I don't care if it's for religious reasons. Fuck that. I mean, it's illegal for women that their pussy get circumcised, or female circumcision. That's illegal, but why is male circumcision legal? The idea of snipping a man's foreskin off, the idea just to me sounds so fucking gross. I believe it should be banned, it should be illegal. There are a lot of people who probably disagree with me on that, but, you know, I'm willing to hear it out. I just think personally it should be illegal.
In the movement that circumcision is still legal and socially acceptable, while female genital mutilation is protected. It's banned under federal law in pretty much every Western country. There are fathers' rights issues that need addressing. There is a very large sentencing gap under the same conditions, in the same circumstances, committing the same crimes. Men are twice as likely to be incarcerated, and they serve generally 60 to 65% longer sentences. That's a wider gap than between blacks and whites in the U.S. So, I mean, there are a whole host of issues that deal with legal and legislative problems and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then there are social issues that need to be addressed, social issues of sexism and stuff like that. So
as you explain that whole penumbra of issues that men's rights deals with,
fuck. Sorry, guys. Stupid password incorrect bullshit.
It seems to me, as I suspected, that there are some things that clearly need addressing, and some things that people are probably unaware of. The sentencing points that you made are really interesting, and I'd like to know more about that, and I'll look into that
probably
more.
True. It's really true.
And parental rights for men, issues about how assets are split during a divorce. Those are all super interesting. I mean, there's a story in the news.
I'm going to say this. I'm going to make this point, too. I know I'm going on a little tangent here. But I personally think alimony should be not allowed. I believe alimony should be only allowed if you have kids. And I really, that should count as child support. That's about it. That's the only reason, in my opinion, alimony should be allowed, is if you have kids together. If you don't have kids and the husband's divorcing the wife because she cheated on him, why in the fuck should she get a dime from him? Just the logic behind it is stupid. I don't care if you guys were married. Fuck that. I'm sorry. I look at it like this. If I divorced my wife because she cheated on me, why would I want to give her money? Only if I'm not saying ever. I'm just, like I said earlier, I just said alimony should only be allowed if you have kids together, in my humble opinion. It should not be allowed because you're pretty much taking the man's money even though they divorced because she cheated on him. I'm using that example, in my humble opinion. And especially also if she's working too and she has a decent job, makes decent money, why should she take his money too? It just, that makes no sense to me. And I'm saying for both, I believe. I'm not saying just for men, I'm saying for women too. Women, the male shouldn't get money from her, or the male shouldn't get money, shouldn't have to give him, okay, what I'm saying is the woman shouldn't get money from him, and he shouldn't get money from her. That's basically what I'm saying. I'm saying alimony should only be allowed in case if you have kids together. Then that's understandable because you have kids together, and they need providing. I understand that. But other than that, that's basically child support, basically. I think that's really it. If you don't have any kids together, I don't want to keep making the same point. So let's continue.
Today about how Ken Griffin, who's a billionaire out of Chicago, is getting divorced, and his wife is demanding $1 million a month.
Yeah.
Because her 3 children have grown accustomed to the lifestyle of having not one, but 2 private jets at their disposal.
Yeah, no, and it's not just $1 million. It's $1 million plus extraordinary expenses like fueling the jets and travel expenses and stuff like that, right?
They all sound like extraordinary expenses to me.
Well, but you look at it too when women occasionally, very wealthy women, get dinged with having to pay that kind of alimony. There's a huge outcry, and there's all kinds of how dare you treat a woman the way we've been treating men all along, right? That's unfair, right? It's suddenly unfair when it's the other way around. And I'm hoping that as more women end up having to pay alimony, that'll provide the impetus, the political will to do away with it, at least in terms of indefinite or lifetime alimony in states like Florida. So
right. So I think that there's a lot that we can agree on issues like that. On the other hand, I'm not sure that I agree on some of the other things that you mentioned, but that's why we want to talk this through and see where we stand on things. Okay. So when you say, let's just take the right to general integrity first. I'm amused by that language, but so do you? It's a wrong way of saying it. Do you understand? Do you agree that female genital mutilation and circumcision are not the same thing? That there is a legitimate reason to do a male circumcision, which is
Oh, Jank, this is where you start off. Oh, there's a legitimate reason. No, there's not. I'm sorry. The idea of snipping a dude's fucking foreskin off is fucking barbaric to me. I'm not saying female circumcision is right either. It's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying, I'm saying they're both wrong. But why is it? Because she's a female, it's worse. And I'm not saying just saying, well, female circumcision, yes, it has health issues, but so does male circumcision. I don't even care about the health issues. Just the idea is just bad to me. You know.
Now, you might
Continue.
disagree on that. I think a lot of people strongly disagree on whether there are good health reasons or not, but that's the main reason to do it. Whereas female genital mutilation, there is absolutely, positively no health consequences other than dire ones, and no benefits whatsoever, and it's done simply for the honor of old customs and the pleasure of men, theoretically, etc. Like, there's a big difference there.
There are differences for sure. Some forms of FGM are actually less severe than the typical circumcision, less damaging, less permanent, and others, of course, are much worse. But one of the issues around that is that you can actually find studies that have been done in places like Yemen and stuff like that where FGM is still practiced. That show the exact same health benefits, a decrease in urinary tract infections and, a decrease in sexually transmitted infections and stuff like that. One of the things that most people don't know is that at least sort of secular communities in the U.S. in particular, circumcision began as a health issue. But it began during the nervous excitation theory of disease before we learned about germs and stuff like that. It was promoted by the guy who invented cornflakes, Dr. John Harvey Kellogg, I believe. And it was promoted as a way of preventing masturbation because masturbation was viewed back then to contribute to mental illness and epilepsy and spina bifida and spinal cord diseases and paralysis and all kinds of things like that. And you can find justifications, you can find medical papers all through the history that, that circumcision cures mental illness, circumcision cures epilepsy, circumcision cures this, it cures that, it cures paralysis, spinal paralysis, it cures all of these things. So it really has been, at least in the sort of the secular community or the non-Jewish, non-Muslim communities, it has been a cure searching for a disease the whole time. And so there really is there's no explicit or definite health benefit that you can provide as far as circumcising a minor child. That's really the thing. I think that any man should have the choice to do that.
Hold on, people. Hey. Sorry about that.
But 4-day-old babies don't have sex. They're not going to get STIs. The urinary tract studies, because most full-term babies were circumcised at the time, the uncircumcised ones were generally preemies in the study, and so of course they're going to be more susceptible to urinary tract infections and other health problems, right?
All right, Karen, I don't want to spend too much time on that.
There you go.
I got it. I mean, I don't agree that it has the same implications and that it's done for the same reasons. But I understand the things that you're laying out. People can decide on their own whether they're in favor of circumcision or not. But if it was intended to cure masturbation, I can assure the audience that it has not worked.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
Okay.
It really doesn't.
Okay,
no.
All right. But I mean, all right, I don't want to get back into it, but female genital mutilation is clearly to oppress women. Clearly. Whereas circumcision is not nearly as clear if it's even in that direction, which even if I granted that to you, it's certainly not like a worldwide thing like let's oppress men by circumcising them. So
Oh, it is. Well, I mean, look at it this way: if it originated in order to suppress male sexuality, then one might actually come to the conclusion that it is there to control the behavior of men.
I mean, the last thing I'll say on that is that religion wants to oppress all of our sexuality, so we can certainly agree on that. Okay, now let's back up a little bit and talk about general things, because I'm curious, where you come at it from a wider look at this. So there's a lot of talk about feminists in your writing, and I just want to make sure that we're talking about the same things here, because do you grant that feminists for a long time did great work in getting women rights that they clearly did not have?
Okay, I'm gonna answer this one. Jank, I can agree. I've said this before. Feminism at one point was relevant. But what she's trying to say, what I've said all along, that feminism is no longer relevant. They're not fighting for what they say they're fighting for. I don't want to go into a giant feminist rant. It's just because I've done that already. But basically, she's saying what I've said. That feminism no longer fights for what it's fighting for. That women aren't oppressed anymore. At least I'm talking United States. And I've said, yeah, there are oppressed women in other countries, but once again, what are feminists doing about that? All I see American feminists are crying about, oh, I can't be topless in public, this and that. Like, they're fighting over, like, the most frivolous bullshit, when there are actually women who are oppressed in other countries. And I think there are even men who are oppressed in other countries, like, certain countries, men at a young age, like, since being a boy, you join the fucking military. And all this bullshit, and all that. But, I mean, I guess that's the end of my little point there. So, continue the video.
And that today there might be a strand of radical feminism that you disagree with.
I'm gonna say this, too. I am so sick of apologists. That's an apologist thing. I'm calling them apologists. Who use, there's a strand, or it's a minority. They try to make it downplay the amount of radical feminists. I'm sorry, radical feminists are the majority. I know a lot of feminists don't want to fucking hear that, but they are the majority at this point. I mean, it would be nice to say, I'm not saying there's no feminists who practice what they preach, but they're pretty much silenced by, even hell, there's a lot of the radical feminists don't even like the rational ones. They're like, we need to be this way. Like, I mean, I guess I can make a little list of what feminists do that kind of piss me off. They are very pro-censorship. If you say anything that's somewhat against women, all they do is make claims like you're a sexist, you're a misogynist. That's their argument. They can never make a regular argument without just name-calling, insults, ad hominems, etc. But that's my little point there.
That I would be surprised if I didn't disagree with, but that there's a distinction between those two different branches of feminism.
No, there's not.
In some ways, yes. In other ways, no. I mean, if you look at even their advocacy right from the very beginning, so this would be even before women suffrage and all of that.
I'm going to make this one more point. A lot of feminists don't want to admit this, but early feminists were racist. They only wanted equality for white women. They didn't really want equality for black women, or I'm going to say minority women, pretty much. They only advocated, we only want equality for white women. There's even quotes you can search up online of, them saying, I don't want to look it up right now, because I really can't, but that was my little point there. So, let's continue on the video.
And you look at cultural norms such as sort of default father custody after divorce, which is the way things used to be done. And the reason why they were done that way is because the man had the sole financial responsibility for taking care of the children. And if he was at fault for the marriage breakdown, he would continue to have financial responsibility for taking care of his ex-wife in the form of alimony, but he would still have the children because it was his job to take care of them. That was his entire. He was solely responsible for that, and you had activists like Carolyn Norton in the UK around the 1850s or so, complaining that this situation really didn't serve women's happiness. And it was mostly talk around what would make women happy and how it was unfair to women that they were made so unhappy after a divorce because they lost their children. So they convinced the British government to change the laws and policies into something called the tender years doctrine. And what that did was it switched to everything to default mother custody. But at the same time, they kept the entire bill on the man. And now, even if a woman was at fault for the marriage breakdown, she would get custody of the kids, and he would be responsible for paying her alimony. That's what child support was sort of lumped in together with it, because it was his responsibility still to support the household of his children, right? So you sort of had this transfer of rights without a transfer of responsibilities, and as far as I know, those responsibilities did not begin to swing the other way until equal rights legislation came around in the 1960s, right? So you look at how they changed things, right? I do believe that there needed to be a renegotiation of gender roles and a renegotiation of the rights and responsibilities of men and women. But in so many cases, what tended to happen was feminists managed to get rights for women without the attendant responsibilities that went along with those things for men. And what feminists would call the default father custody that occurred before feminism, they would call that male patriarchal privilege, right? Whereas nowadays, if you even suggest that, men should not be forced to pay child support, even for kids that were born out of wedlock, that they had no say in whether they would be born, that's considered unfair, right? That the woman who has the custody should have the entire responsibility. That's unfair to those women. Yet when it was men that got custody and responsibility, that was privilege, right? So I mean, they've really renegotiated things in such a way that women received a lot of rights and kept the responsibilities on the male half of the equation. And that's what I've always taken issue with. So
Karen, I get that, and that's certainly an interesting point historically and today, as we discussed in the beginning. Custodial rights is some of the things that I think you guys have the best points on. But
there you go.
But when we talk about the history of feminism, women weren't allowed to own property. Men got to make all the decisions in the household. They got to make all the business decisions. They weren't even allowed to vote.
Here's another point I make. Voting for a while, even if you're a man, you had to be rich. You had to own property. You had to be rich. You had to be like for a while. Yeah, voting was only for the upper class. So you can be a lower class male and still not be allowed to vote. It was like that for a while. That's what a lot of feminists don't want to tell you. They don't want to make it like, oh, it was this sexist thing. But for a while, only the elite got to vote. For a while, only the elite got to do a lot of things. But voting was a major one. Only rich, and I think you had to, of course, you had to be white. But I don't want to make this a race. I'm not talking about race. This is more about gender. This is what this video is talking about, though. Continue.
So you're a woman, Karen. I assume that you're happy that feminists got you the right to own property, the right to vote, etc.
Again, with the property issue, that was a little bit one-sided too, because under coverture, a woman who was single was considered femme sole, and she had every right to own property and earn income in her own name, and to enter into contracts under her own name. This was the way it was for a single woman. She could own a business, whatever, right? For a married woman, because the responsibility for her financial well-being, all of the responsibility for the entire family was seated in the husband and father. Because of that, of course he had authority within the family, right? Of course he had the authority to decide how the money was spent. And another thing that feminists managed to do between the 1850s and the 1910s across most of the West was they emancipated women's property and income, not just from her husband, but from the entire institution of family, right? So it was still his responsibility to pay for everything, and her income was her own to do with as she wished. She was still entitled to his support, even if she made more money than him. And that even went all the way down to the tax burden on her property and income. That was not her responsibility to pay. That was his responsibility to pay, right? And at that time, women won the right, even when married, to enter into contracts. So they could enter into contracts with anybody, but most lenders were not stupid. They knew that they could not hold this woman accountable for her debt because it was her husband's job to pay for everything, right? And if she didn't have a husband, it could end up falling on her father or her brother, right? So they would require a cosigner. This was seen to be, vastly unfair, but there was a reason for it, right? And the reason was it was the man who was ultimately accountable for repaying the debt.
So I understand all that, and I think that you're generally making the case that the pendulum swung too far in giving unequal rights to women at some point. But even before the cases that you're referring to, women could, whether single or not, couldn't own any property. And now at this point,
I think you'd have to really look into that. I think you really would, because there were in the 1430s there were female master blacksmiths on the roster in London.
So Karen,
in the guilds.
Yes, it depends on the time period, the culture you're talking about, and how far back you go. Right? There's no blanket answer, so it depends.
Of course there isn't, but people
overall,
make blanket statements like women couldn't own property. Well, that's just not the case.
But Karen, for Christ's sake, you have to concede that men certainly had, throughout history, far more ability to own property and to be the masters of their own fate in terms of...
I'll admit, I will somewhat agree with Jank there. Men for a long time had the power, and I'm not denying that. But I'd still, for some reason, be looked at as a misogynist, even though I just admitted, but whatever.
Finance the women. You've got to concede that, right?
Certainly.
Okay.
Certainly that is certainly true.
Okay, good. All right, so now aren't we in a vastly better situation, even if it isn't nearly perfect, today than we were in those years, and it's because of the hard work of women who got those rights for other women?
Well, like I said, I would have been much happier if they'd done it in a more equal way.
Straight up. Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Has happened is that we've come to consider certain things to be normal, like sort of the idea of a man being declared a default. He's the default father declared in court because he didn't contest paternity in the first 30 days after the child was born. There's a man who's facing jail in Michigan right now because he refuses to pay the $30,000 of back child support he supposedly owes for a child that isn't even his. And we've sort of come to see this enforcement of responsibilities on men who sometimes had nothing to do with anything, like somebody who is not even the father of the kid, as is just the new normal, right? It's just how it is. And these are things that can really destroy somebody's life. Now, one of the things that I always try to draw attention to is the fact that all of these things, all the way back to the beginning, to the 1850s, have been reformed in ways where, in every sense, a woman gains privileges and a man loses them. So we really have it hasn't just, the pendulum has swung, but it's really gone too far. And when you look at some of the complaints of modern day feminists, And this is really what it is. Like, if it was just equal rights, if that's all it was about, I would consider myself a feminist if that's all that there was. But there's all kinds of baggage attached to it. There's all kinds of theoretical baggage and the feminist lens and a system of philosophies and a worldview and ideology that's all attached to that and underpins what they do. And those, I feel, the theories are highly toxic. I think that they promote discord, they promote fear between the sexes, they promote resentment, and they aren't good for anybody. So
Straight up, that's the truth. I agree with that. Just my cat in the background. I agree with that too. Like, straight up. That's what they do promote fear, almost, and resentment on both sides. And I'm not saying this, I'm not MRA. Let me make that point. Not MRA. I mean, I agree with, most of their positions, but I wouldn't call myself an MRA. It's just because, same thing with feminists. I'm not for one side equality. I want equality for both men and women. I don't want, you know what, I'm going to join men's rights because I'm a man. No. Same thing with feminists, feminism. I believe, why fight for equality for one side of the spectrum? Both genders need work. And I think, basically, I could agree with that. But continuing.
Karen, look, when it gets to specific issues in the news, etc., we'll have to bring you back on and have further conversations. But just to round up this conversation, there's two other general points that I'd like to discuss. Look, when you talk about, if you say radical feminism or radical political correctness, there's another story out in the news today about how one of the city universities in New York is going to take away Mr. and Miss as titles because they think that it promotes gender inequality. How it does that, I have no idea, right? So do I think that there is a place for a men's rights movement to address how far the pendulum has swung and to address some of the issues where men are being treated unequally? Yes, I do. I want to make sure that the pendulum for men's rights movement doesn't swing so far that it becomes radical in the opposite direction. So, that's why I'm going to ask one more time on the issue of the right to vote. I mean,
Jake, why are you back on this right to vote? I thought you guys moved on from that. I thought we moved on from that. My cat in the background. She's in heat right now, so don't mind the loud meowing. But anyway, continuing.
You can't just tar feminism with the brush of current day.
Okay, I'm sorry, Jank. Yeah, you can. I normally don't like lumping things together, but there's way too many examples of feminists being radical to the point they're almost the majority. This apologist bullshit. Well, not all feminists are. I'm so tired of hearing that. Honestly, I'm not saying all feminists are bad. There's probably some rational ones, but they are outnumbered by the radical ones, which I'm sorry are almost the majority. I'm not going to say the majority, but they're definitely near the majority at this point. It boggles my mind why people just won't admit it, or why feminists won't say, you know what, we don't agree with these people. Why don't you just say that? I've not heard a feminist say, we don't agree with these so-called feminists. Then maybe I can say, you know what, at least they're trying to say we don't agree with it, but they just kind of stand back. It's the same thing with the cop argument. I'm going to use this one. Look at the police brutality situation now. A lot of people think all cops are bad. Are all cops bad? No. But the good ones just stand by and let the bad ones do whatever. They don't, just saying get up. You know what? We're not going to stand by and let these bad cops ruin the image of good cops. It should be the same thing with feminists, but feminists aren't doing it. They're just being apologists. They're playing it off. They don't want to admit it. So, continue.
Small strand of radical feminism. I mean, feminists got...
It's not small, Jank. It's pretty big. They're almost the majority at this point. So...
Women the right to vote. Shouldn't you give an enormous thank you to them? Not just because you're a woman, but also because for the sake of humanity, they did a great service to all of us?
Okay, well, there were two movements there, right? There was the suffragist movement, and then there was the suffragette movement. And the suffragist movement was interested in votes for everybody, and a lot of them really resented the suffragettes, particularly a lot of female suffragists resented the suffragettes because the suffragettes got up to all kinds of crazy stuff. They lobbed bombs, they burned post offices. I read an account in a man's diary from back then that they tried to push him off a cliff. Out of chivalry, he didn't report the attempted murder. So I mean, they got into all kinds of criminal activities and stuff like that. I mean, you could even say they were domestic terrorists. And a lot of the suffragists were like, you're just demonstrating that women shouldn't have the vote. I mean, and a lot of public sentiment back then, and this is the history that we don't get told. A lot of public sentiment back then was, well, if this is how women behave, should they get the vote? And another thing, too, there were politicians in the UK who were discussing giving the women the vote long before the suffragettes started up. And
oh, yeah. I'm sure, Karen, if they continue to ask politely, men would have given it to them anyway. Men were such sweethearts throughout history. I'm sure they would have just said, hey, women, even though we've denied you the right to vote for the entire history of mankind, literally mankind, if you just stuck around and been polite, we'd have given...
Okay, Jank, this is where you're losing me, dude. See, around this part of the video is where it pretty much gets... You start losing me, man. You're shouting over her. The first part was pretty chill. He was just asking questions and all that bullshit. But now you're just being fucking obnoxious, talking over her. I mean, I'll get more into that.
To you anyway. Come on, Karen. You gotta realize that's the biggest load of horse crap you've ever heard in your life.
They took a poll.
You know what the crazy thing is? What boggled me in my mind about people like Jank? He's not even listening to what she's saying. He's literally strawmanning her. She's not saying... She probably is thankful she got the right to vote. I can understand what she's saying, because I'm actually trying to pay attention to what she's saying. Jank's just literally just looking at the surface of what she's saying and just saying, oh, that's just sexist. Literally, that's all he's doing right now. That's what a typical feminist does. They just strawman people. So...
of women. And 70% of them didn't want the vote. They thought...
I know, and the women in Saudi Arabia want the burqa. I know, because of the culture that they grew up in. Karen, give me a thank you. Look...
Jank, okay. Dude, what the fuck? He literally is just strawmanning her, talking over her. To me, that, is so weak. That means you have a weak argument. To the point, well, I'm just gonna talk over you, instead of actually trying to pay attention to what you're saying. I'm just gonna talk over you. And what boggles my mind, Young Turks bashes Fox News for doing this, which, I fucking hate Fox News. But, TYT are no different in my eyes. They're Fox News, but just for the liberals. They make up facts almost. Jank literally, he always insults Bill O'Reilly for talking over people. Jank, you're talking over people. You're talking over her. You're not even actually paying attention to what she's actually saying. You're just making ad hominem. You're just from what surface she's saying. You're not actually paying attention to what she's saying. You're pretty much just strawmanning her. So.
Everything's going great, but you're not being reasonable. You're being ridiculous. Give me a thank you.
Okay, fuck you, Jank. Straight up. Did you just say she's being ridiculous? You're being ridiculous, Jank. You're yelling and making these exaggerated motions. You're strawmanning her. You're talking over her. You're not actually paying attention to what she was saying. And she's being all nice and chill. She's not yelling or anything, and you're just shouting and being an obnoxious douche.
Give me a thank you for feminists for getting your right to vote. Otherwise, stop voting and go make me a ham sandwich.
Why, Jank? Go make me a ham sandwich? Really? Is that... Wow, Jank. That was so fucking lame. I don't know if that was to prove a point, and even if it was so fucking stupid. Like, really, that's not what she's saying. Fucking TYT.
The expansion of the franchise is a lot more complicated than what we've been led to believe. The women in that poll, the main reason that they cited was they did not want to be subject to the draft, and they thought that if they did, because this was the main justification for giving men the vote, and in most places, the amount of time between universal male suffrage and universal female suffrage was as little as 50 years, sometimes as little as 10, right? So it's never been a history of always men had the vote and made women wait for millennia. No, men got suffrage because men could be drafted. And SCOTUS even confirmed that in 1917 when there was a Supreme Court challenge saying the draft was unconstitutional because it was involuntary servitude. And SCOTUS outright said that the draft is constitutional because it is a reciprocal obligation on the part of citizens for the rights they receive from government, right? So you have we have this idea that these decisions, right, that these differences between how men and women were treated, we have been told that all of this was just sexist and arbitrary and it was for no good reason. It was just because penis, right? But that's 70% of women in that poll. They were really concerned about the fact that they would have to take on all kinds of male responsibilities, that they would lose all kinds of privileges like the exemption from the draft, their right to financial support.
Karen, yada, yada, yada. Do you want the right to vote or not?
Oh my god, Jank, you're such a retard, dude. Straight up, I can keep saying, dude, you're being Bill O'Reilly right now. You really are. You're talking over her. I to say this again, you're not even paying attention to what she's saying. I'm not even 100% agreeing with what she's saying, but I can at least see what point she's trying to make. He's just, you know what, I'm just gonna just straw man you, be obnoxious, and...
Are you gonna give a thank you to the women who fought so hard, sometimes risked their
and he's
lives
making the same point.
that right to vote? Or are you going to just keep saying, oh, well, the women of Saudi Arabia love wearing their burqas, and the women in Britain, who, while being oppressed and not having the right to vote, said, yeah, they like bending their neck and telling men that, yes, we shouldn't vote, we're silly little women. Are you going to give me a thank you for that, or you're just going to keep on blah, blah, blah on that?
Ridiculous. And frankly, I think the last time I voted was 14 years ago in a municipal election. Like Mother Jones.
I'm gonna be completely honest. Voting's bullshit. I'm gonna be completely honest. I've said this before. All politicians are just a bunch of lying fucking phonies who just want power. They'll say, "We're doing it for the rights of the people." I know I'm going on a little tangent here, but I'm just in general saying voting's bullshit. I mean, I'm old enough to vote, and I'm not gonna vote. I don't really care because we're gonna get another phony president anyway in the office. So voting, it's bullshit. Let's be honest. Your vote doesn't really matter. You know who really makes the real choice? The Electoral College. They're the actual ones who actually pick the winner. So your vote doesn't matter. So I just don't see the point in voting. I'm, even as a male, just think voting's bullshit.
Instead, you don't need the vote to kick ass.
All right, that's okay. You're radical, Karen. You're absolutely ridiculously radical.
Wow, Jank. Now you're just insulting her now. Oh, you're a radical. Oh my god. TYT, you're radical leftist. I can easily say that. Like, the fact... I don't want to say all liberals are like this, but there are a lot of liberals who revert to just insults like you're sexist, you're racist, you're a radical. Like, you're not even hearing what she's saying. I can keep saying that, but I know I keep saying that point, but it's so true. He's not even paying attention to what she's saying. He's just strawmanning her. Just the insult, that insult. Oh, you're a radical, ridiculous. You're fucking ridiculous, Jank. I'm gonna end it here. Jank, you're a terrible interviewer. TYT, you suck. And once again, I've said this about TYT a long time ago. That if you don't agree with them, you're fucking dumb. Like, oh, you're dumb because you don't agree with me. I'm right, you're wrong. That's pretty much how TYT are. I'm right, you're wrong. You know, they don't even like. At least we can agree to agree to disagree. You know. I think there was no clear winner here. I mean, I'm probably gonna say Karen because she was still saying while Jank was just being a obnoxious douche. TYT, you suck. But yeah, guys, I know this video kind of went long. But yeah, guys, I'm signing off. I probably will do a wrestling related video. I'll probably do Wrestle Talk tomorrow because I haven't done Wrestle Talk in a little bit. But until then, guys, I'm signing off. Peace.